Now, an exercise to identify bodies of persons who died in the ghastly Kintampo accident is currently underway at the Jema Staff District Hospital in Kintampo. About 30 people lost their lives in a fatal accident on the Kintampo-Tamale Highway in the Bono East region on Monday morning. Now, although the bodies were burnt beyond recognition, family members are already at the hospital hoping to identify the remains of their relatives. The charred bodies, JoyNews understands, includes a 12-year-old and a police officer. Let's head to the Bono East region to speak to Adum FM's correspondent, Wiafia Kenting, who is currently at the Jema Staff Hospital. Wiafia, thank you for your time. Tell us, what do we know about the numbers so far of the dead?
Thank you. Like you already indicated, the number remains 31, out of which 29 are completely, we can say that it is tired, and then we can identify 2 of them who were not bent at all. So at the Kintampo South District Hospital, which is at Jema Government Hospital, all the 31 bodies were deposited there yesterday, but in the evening time, the bus driver, the family came and they were able to identify the body because those who retrieved the body had actually notified them because they picked the body right under the tail wheel, so it was marked. So they took the body and they since buried that one. So now we have 30 bodies still sitting at the Kintampo South District Hospital mortuary.
Are there any other families who have turned up at the hospital because their loved ones are missing?
There was a policeman among them, Lance Corporal, who was stationed at Esuhu. The family have also been there. Well, they say actually they are not even interested in identifying whom the body is, but they are convinced that they is among the burnt ones because he had another family member in the car who survived. And so he called on the other families, and they have come. So now all what they are doing is that they're talking to the police to at least see to it that their body has been, they've identified their body, or the body is among those over there. And whatever government will do about it, that is what they are waiting for, that direction. There's another woman who also survived, but he has lost a 12-year-old girl. So they also went to the place with the family, and they've actually identified that 12-year-old girl. But if they will take the body in association to go and bury, or they will allow it for government directives, that is what we don't know. But when they came and identified the body, they said they were going back to the police to report that they've actually identified their body. So far, these are the few ones that we can talk about. Others, when they come, they see the situation is so bad, and then they will go back. What they are just saying is that now it is left with government. Whatever government will want to do with the body, whether to do mass burial or whatever, because they will not be able to even convey the body anywhere, and they have nothing to show to their families that, well, this is the remains of their relatives. So since they are convinced that their families or their relatives were part of the situation or the accident, they have nothing more to do.
Now, we know that there were a number of survivors. How are the authorities working with the survivors to help identify, if possible, those who were on either of the vehicles?
Yes, so the survivors in the bus, in the big bus, which was carrying 13 people, that one had 6 people survived, who were sent to the hospital earlier, but they've all been discharged, including the pregnant woman. So the pregnant woman was also seen at the mortuary today, this afternoon, and they are all looking healthy. So the families have come trying to take them home. So what is keeping that woman is because of the girl who is among the burnt ones, that they want to see what the police will tell them. Other than that, the others, they've gone back to their various destinations because they are affected. And it is only the policeman that this young man who survived is able to identify that is a family member. So
Right.
for the others, we have no idea yet.
Do you know whether the hospital is providing any sort of emotional or mental health assistance to the survivors? They've been through a trauma. Is that part of the treatment they are being given?
To that, I don't know of now. To that, I don't know of now. I don't also know if yesterday at the Kintampo Municipal Hospital something of that sort went on. But when we went there, we saw that they were giving them medical attention, and then I didn't actually see any psychologists. I didn't see any person with that capability talking to them. So I don't know if it was done. I cannot witness to that.
All right. So at this point, we have about 29 bodies that are still awaiting identification. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. So we have 30 bodies. It is only one that has been taken away.
Right. But 2 of them have been identified, which means 29 are yet to be identified. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
All right. Have the authorities given any instructions to members of the public whose family members are missing? Is there any guidelines on how people with missing family members can come to the hospital to see if they can identify anybody?
So like the police and others, they are really, if you interview them, they tell you this is the situation. For the hospital, especially the JMA one, that wasn't the hospital that took care of and it didn't even occur in that particular district. Only that the Kintampo, which is the municipality, district morgue or the hospital morgue is not functioning well according to what they were saying, and that is why it was conveyed into another district. So that hospital is only now saving the bodies for whatever directions that the police and then maybe political authorities or whatever will tell them. But the administrator of the hospital was also whispering into my ears that last year when similar incident occurred and there was a mass burial, the hospital didn't take part in that very well. They were not so much consulted. So later, their authorities also called them and were calling them. So for now, they are also taking charge that they have brought this number of bodies to them. This number has been taken away. It is left with this. And so if they will want to do mass burial, if they want to do anything, they will have to pass through the hospital administration.
Right.
But as we speak now, there hasn't been any direction from anywhere to them as how to go by the bodies.
All right. Now let's talk about the incident itself. I know investigations began from yesterday. So have we learned anything else about the circumstances that led to the accident?
Well, all what the police, the MTTD, who maybe the technical people are all saying, or what we also, even from the layman's point of view, witnessed is that the bus driver, the bus driver, actually caused the accident. Either he was sleeping and veered off his lane and collided with the other one on its lane. Because you could see that the 207, the driver had tried to avoid the other one, but still he couldn't. So from where the accident occurred, it is so straightforward for everybody to attribute it to the driver or the vehicle of that of the big bus.
How about the fire? How about the fire? Do we now understand what caused it?
On the 207, they could detect that it was carrying a motorcane. And it was believed that the motorcane had some petrol in it. And there was also a gallon that suspectedly was also having the fuel, the petrol in it. So according to the fire, perhaps that might have aggravated the flames, the fire. So fine, anything could have happened to strike the fire, but at how it went, the intensity of it might have been motivated by that fuel in the motorcane.
Very well. I want to thank you very much for your time with us. Fiafia Kenting is our Adom FM correspondent in the region. Now, transport consultant Cecil Gabra is blaming excess fuel in one of the vehicles for the fire that burnt the victims beyond recognition.
Carry 1 gallon of fuel to travel with. It's against the regulations. You must not do it. And that is why when you go to certain fuel stations like the airport Shell and then you are holding a gallon, they'll tell you, no, we are not going to give you fuel. So that was a violation. You must not carry fuel anywhere, right? Even if there's any emergency, you need to find a solution to it, okay? And I mean, you look at the taxi drivers, they have 1 gallon, and so on, right? But naturally, you cannot hold fuel because anything could happen.
Yeah.
Especially if it's gasoline. I mean, the petrol that we all know. In case of any smell and there's any open fire, boom. So this is what also happened, and that is why everybody was burnt to ashes. I mean, it's really sad. Now, the second thing that you mentioned was overspeeding, right? A lot of drivers do not even understand the markings on the road. Right? I did it with your colleague Israel the other time. If you are driving and then you see broken lines, you only see broken lines on the highway, on a straight road, and that is an information to you directly to tell you that you may overtake. I didn't say you can't overtake. You may overtake if only the road is clear. And therefore, if there's any vehicle coming towards you, right, you cannot. And that is why you always have you may. Right, so in this case, one, the accident happened at dawn. Visibility was very poor, right? And driving in the daytime is very different than driving in the evening, because in the evening colors even change. You see red, and red becomes orange or something else.
Road safety expert Cecil Gabra speaking to me earlier on the AM show. Now, even as we're discussing accidents like the Kintampo one, we're receiving news of another accident this afternoon in Wale Wale on the Bolga-Tamale Road. Let's learn a bit more from Mr. Benjamin Yamusa, who's the acting medical superintendent at Wale Wale Municipal Hospital, where some of the victims were taken. Mr. Yamusa, thank you for your time. First of all, can you tell us some numbers? Do we have any dead? Hello, Mr. Yamusa, can you hear me? Mr. Yamusa, if you can hear me, I want to know if there are any dead from this accident. Right, well, you'll have to forgive us. We're working to reach Mr. Yamusa. This is about an accident which just happened in Wale Wale this afternoon on the Bolga-Tamale Road. Mr. Yamusa, can you hear me? Right, we will return to this story, which is just evolving as we speak, and we'll bring you details shortly. In the meantime, though, stay with us. There's more to come on the Pulse. All right, let's see if we can go back to the line to Mr. Benjamin Yamusa. Hello, sir. Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me, sir? Mr. Yamusa? All right, we'll return to this. In the meantime, though, there's lots more happening in Ghana. We'll bring it to you now. How, for example, we'll be getting to the details of that accident shortly. But meanwhile, I've been speaking to the station master of the transport yard where the Yutong bus worked regarding the Kintampo accident. Now, he revealed to me that the driver had been overworked before that fateful trip.
It's my driver. The way I trust him, in fact, and the way we also work with each other, we don't have any problem with any. You don't have any problem with anybody in the whole station.
So he's a very good driver.
Master, I'm telling you the truth in the name of God.
Okay. Now one of the passengers says that he was falling asleep.
Come again?
One of the passengers who survived the accident. She is telling us that the Yutong bus driver was sleeping. He was falling asleep.
That one I can't say because what I'm saying that I can't say that one. I'm not inside the car, but I know his character.
So what will he normally do if he's driving and he's feeling sleepy? From what you know about his character, what does he do?
He will park and sleep.
Is that what he normally does?
Yes.
So at this accident happened at dawn. You are saying that he had already traveled once, brought some passengers, traveled again, and this was his third trip?
What I'm saying is, the way I'm respecting him, the way that I know that, the way he's doing his work, it's not the driver that will go today. You see, sometimes somebody will leave Boku today. When he reach Kumasi today, tomorrow, she will load tomorrow again. Tomorrow next is there. He's the one photographer that we are talking about him. With university. When he load here and go, she will make almost 3 days or 4 days before coming back here.
I see. So
that is why I'm saying that I'm respecting him.
Okay, so you were saying that you wrote down the names of the passengers. So do you have the names of the passengers who were in this car?
Yes, I have the lady that who's coming from the the Savon Kari.
All right. Well, let's go back to the phone lines. I believe we now have Mr. Benjamin Yamusa, who's the acting medical superintendent at the Wale Wale Municipal Hospital. An accident that happened just this afternoon has had some casualties brought to the hospital. Let's learn more. Mr. Yamusa, good afternoon. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon.
So what can you tell us? First of all, are there any dead from this accident?
With this one, we've not recorded any death. There's no death.
So how many casualties has your hospital received?
They brought in 5.
Okay.
5 people.
What do we know about the circumstances that led to this accident?
Okay, according to the people who rushed from town to the hospital, they said a Yutong bus loaded from Kumasi to Boku failed brakes and ran onto a standby car in Wale Wale at the station there.
Right, so this happened at the station?
At the station, just at the station.
Okay, what are the nature of their injuries?
Right, 2 of the victims have sustained fractures in their left lower limbs. That is a male and a female.
Right.
Then the other one who also has some injuries on the head. Then we have 2 other people who also just sustained some minor lacerations. Those ones, they have been worked on already. And I think they have even left. Well, the 2 of them, they have left the hospital. It was not so serious.
Right. Now, how were they brought in? Was there an ambulance?
Yeah, they came with the national ambulance.
Right.
It was the national ambulance that brought them.
Okay. So tell us, you are learning that the brakes failed. Now,
yes.
Those who were injured, were they all in the Yutong bus, or were there some of them who were just standing by?
Yeah, they said according to what we have heard, they said they were all in the bus.
Right. So
they said yeah.
Okay. At this point, are there any concerns about any of the patients, or are they all stable? What condition are they in?
Yes, they've been stabilized, but we are thinking of referring the 2 who sustained the fractures to Tamale Teaching Hospital.
Okay.
So that is where we are now. They've been stabilized; they are okay, but then with the nature of the fractures, we need to refer them to Tamale Teaching Hospital, where to continue with the care.
All right. Okay, yeah. I want to thank you very much for that update, Mr. Benjamin Yamusa, who is with the Wale Wale Municipal Hospital. 5 casualties were brought in following an accident at the Wale Wale station. It is believed that a Yutong bus, which was en route from Kumasi to Boko, had brake failure and drove into a stationary truck. The 5 have sustained various levels of injury, the most serious being fractured lower limbs of 2 passengers. There might be a need to transfer those 2 to the regional hospital, but that is a decision yet to be made. That's the latest from an accident that occurred just this afternoon in Wale. Now, the conversation about dualizing highways and getting 2 drivers for long journeys has become a proposal to help curb avoidable accidents. My colleague Roland Walker visited the Tamale station here in Accra to gauge the opinions of drivers and passengers alike.
24 hours after that horrid accident was recorded on the Kintampo Road, it brings to mind many of the related issues that JoyNews and the rest of the multimedia channels have been talking about. And we're talking about the campaign Arrive Alive. Now, it also brings to the fore the need for a more concerted effort. But what a better way for us to increase the conversation, the tempo of it, and also enrich what the discussions will be that will influence not only the minds of the ordinary motorists, the drivers, etc., but those who have to enforce regulations, those who have to implement laws, and those even that are occupying the top echelons of Ghana's ministries, departments, and agencies. Look, we're here at the Neoplan station right here in Accra, what you can also call the Odona station, just adjacent. But when the driver starts the journey, the conversation should be about how they can be in one piece. We'll be speaking to officials of the Ghana Private Road Transport Union who are the Neoplan station right here and the Odona adjacent ones, and then also speak to a number of the drivers as well. Name, sir?
I'm Otis.
Otis. And you work with the GPRT?
Yes, please.
And I'm sure that you've worked with as a transporter with all these drivers over the period, won't you say?
Yeah, we've been working with them for some time now.
Okay. And then I also have a number of officials here. Brad, on the member didn't come to say?
Yes, I don't know your
Great. Your friend saying?
A friend Bishop.
Bishop. So that's the Bishop of the Neoplan. This is the Neoplan station, right? Of the Neoplan, Bishop Obinim. What's your friend saying?
No, not fully.
Not fully. Okay, so, but let me start with you, if you can just, so that we can get a proper view of you and give space to Nano for you also to be within the frame. What sort of, as GPRT, education do you give all these drivers, the porters and their mates, etc.?
Thank you. First of all, we would like to say GPRT, we run programs for them, just like last week. There were road safety was here to organize a course, a refresher course for all the drivers just last week. Then next week we also have another program for we the executives and our drivers. We always try to advise them, guide them. You see, when they load from this terminal and they are on the road, they are on their own. But calls and other stuff comes in, which we do call drivers. If they are driving bad on the road, we do call them back to correct them.
So what you're saying is that sometimes you get some responses from the passengers?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Now, let me just avert your mind to the Kintampo accident, and is the newest we have currently. But we know that we've been consistent with the accident, and since January up to now, they've just been piling up. Usually, as an administrator, somebody who interacts and supervises with the drivers, when you hear of such news, what comes to mind?
It's always sad because you never know. I myself, I might be a transporter, but my wife and my children might be on the road traveling. And when this happens to them, whether you are a transporter or any other, you will feel bad because you don't know the people on board. It might be a brother of mine, a sister of mine. So when it happens, first of all, it affects us emotionally as human.
Akwehye sisana te se enradie yi se na homache de no esi wo Kintampo kwan no so no eya mote sana e de na ba modwem ase moye driver for porters ne mate for ne sa anyama no
me ade ba kwan ya na me hu no se ensem ba bi se na se ye ka bibi efa nkwanhia no ho ana se ne e ma esia me hu no se enya ade e ko ba bia ye drivers ne de ye ka ya sema ye be ka bie ne wa ase e ko ba bia ba senka mutie de yen so ye ka no so a e na ban no e boa ye ne a me fin se nka enema betimi atotoye e fi se wohwe bibi ti se drivers a e yusu buses na dodo na ho no ma entua omoka wo so ho entua omoka enam se driver phone ni kama phone ni no obia ni ho no ma oboa drivers de bia asem no ba ya na mo yi agu driver for so hwe from Accra to Boko na driver ni ba akopɛ o sister nanim na o ko Boko
and he is saying that when the incident happened, it looks like those who are heads of authority, and I'm sure even the media is also included because it's a broader conversation when some of these accidents do happen, don't seem to talk for the drivers. Then he zoomed in or transitioned into a discussion about how drivers sometimes are not well paid, and he gave an example of how a driver alone would have to sit in a big bus and drive all the way to Boko, for example.
A driver driving all the way from Accra to, let's say, Boko, normally we advise that the drivers are two, normally, when they are going on such journeys. But you see, these drivers, there's also the issue of this one doesn't trust the other. So let's assume if I give this bus two drivers to take it from Accra to, let's say, Boko, there is a possibility that one of them will say, okay, I'll drive in, then you drive out. Meanwhile, that is not the intent. The intent is to let one drive halfway, then the other continue. But these drivers have their own, in quotes, spiritual issues and other stuff. I will not be okay working with this one. But we will be on the same bus driving to Boko. He thinks probably there's something that you do to take over the car.
But those are just human elements, etc. How do we make sure we streamline some of these things so that this become some policy issues that could run through across all the transport operators, all the relevant stations across the country?
Thank you. I think going forward, GPRTU at the moment is looking at that part, that we will enforce two drivers on board for buses that will be traveling far. That is what we are looking at it. Unfortunately,
Has it come up in any meeting you've attended?
Yes, please. As a matter of fact, when GPRTU were launching the small Toyota buses, we had a small meeting that our regional chairman actually discussed that whenever we are traveling or the bus is on a long journey, we should consider having two drivers instead of a driver and a mate. Why not use two drivers? Then one will act as the mate. Because we have issues where a driver was traveling and he fell sick. The journey was not that long, but we had to send a driver from Accra to Nkoko to go and take. So we are considering having two drivers on board.
You're watching The Pulse. My name is Kojo Yankson. Still to come, sanitation in sharp focus again as environmental service providers and environmental NGOs raise red flags about looming sanitation threat following the non-payment of landfill operators in the country. And today, we interrogate the concerns. Plus, we hear from Koniwas. Stay with us. Welcome back to The Pulse. Now, the Coalition of NGOs in Water and Sanitation, Koniwas, and the Environmental Service Providers Association, ESPA, are demanding the immediate payment of landfill operators in the country, a factor which the association describes as a threat to sanitation and development. Now, in a joint statement read by the Vice Chairman of Koniwas, Mr. Yao Ata Ahin, the government owes landfill operators 42 million Ghana cedis in unpaid cash. Now, this makes it difficult for waste managers to fulfill their mandates, as many are either having to halt operations, working unfavorably, or on the verge of collapse. Now, the bodies made these revelations at the first of a monthly environmental dialogue series in Accra today.
The President's vision of making Accra the cleanest city in Africa at the end of his first term in office is yet to receive the requisite support to ensure that it comes to fruition.
Right. Ama Gbadago of the Environmental Service Providers Association is here with us. She's the executive secretary of that organization. And we're, of course, joined by Mr. Yao Ata Ahin, who you just heard and saw in that video. He's the vice chair of CONIWAS. It's very good to see you both. Thank you very much for your time. So help us understand the reality of this situation. If you don't mind, I'll start with you, Ama. What do we know about the reason for the delay in payment of millions of cedis to these service providers?
Thank you. And then good afternoon to your viewers. When we talk about landfills management, what a lot of Ghanaians do not know is these landfills have been outsourced to the private sector. So some private sector people are now responsible in managing the landfills. And then in managing the landfills, it's capital intensive. Even to do proper landfill management in a day, which requires getting the required compactors, specialized bulldozers, getting your fuel, getting even your labor, and then even doing proper fumigation, and even the treatment of the leachates. All these things are capital intensive. So ideally, with the contracts that we have with most of the assemblies, which is known as a fee and performance-based contracts, which is also referred to as a franchise, the assemblies' role is to ensure that they provide us with a final disposal sites where we can go and dump refuse. But unfortunately, most of the assemblies do not even have these landfills. So there are very few ones that are there that there's so much pressure on that a private person has taken upon to manage. The person manages and it's in arrears or is in debt as far back as 2016, 2017, 2018. So what happens? Because the landfills are not being managed properly, anytime you realize that the ESPA members would have to be in a long queue to dump because the excuse is their equipment are broken down, they've not been able to cap so that you can even have access to go and dump. And the operator...
Explain this capping.
You know, when you put on a proper engineering landfill or for any landfill to manage properly, when you put the refuse, it has to be leveled. While after the leveling, then you apply sand so that you can cap it properly. That is the capping. Then you can create another layer. Then you can continue. Then you keep capping. So you see what we have at the landfills right now, which is almost like a mountain. Ideally, that's not how it's supposed to be. But because the operators, those managing the landfills, hardly get the necessary or the requisite support in managing these landfills, they also do what they can do with the little resources that they have. And more often than not, they have to depend on loans. And then when government pays them, before they offset all those loans and things. But what is happening is the rains are just about setting in. And as we speak, we don't even have enough landfills. And just the few ones that we have that we can access, with Accra, the operators are waste landfills. What they are telling us is they are owed so much that they cannot continue providing service if they don't get any support.
Right. What you describe as support is actually money that they are owed, they are entitled to. There's a contract, am I right?
Yes, there's a contract.
So it's not support. This is their money.
Yes, it's their money. But you see, when it comes to Ghana and it comes to waste management, ever since the private sector came in, it looks as if we want it and we are in it. So it's like carry the load. But ideally, that is not how it's supposed to be. So our plea this morning, our plea to the government is the government should intervene and pay all the arrears. Will you believe Kumasi landfills, Oti landfills, the operator, the J. Stanley, has not been paid for over 6 years. And the company is virtually collapsed. How can you then promote private? You said, when we come, private sector is the agent of growth. Yet, the private sector, the players invest their money and they don't get the necessary support in the enabling environment. You are rather crippling the companies that want to even come up and support. Meanwhile, when you look at the employment we've given to Ghanaians over 300,000 jobs have been created as of sanitation alone.
Right.
So it means we are playing a key role. So all that we are asking is we want government to take that. The highest political commitment we've had is from our Excellency saying he wants Accra to be clean. If truly this is the
cleanest city in Africa, that's what he said.
Which is the highest political commitment we've ever received as Ghanaians, then I think the government of the day needs to do more to prove to Ghanaians that truly they are committed to that statement.
Right.
So all that we are asking is all outstanding landfill bills should be paid to enable the operators to continue working so that the other members can also go and dispose of their refuse every now and then.
Okay.
If the landfills are not managed, that's when you see heaps of refuse in the cities because we don't have anywhere to send the refuse. And as if that is not enough, even the facilities that we have right now, they are so limited.
Okay.
Landfilling actually is not the way to go. We need to start looking at options like treatment facilities and then recycling.
I was hoping we would come to that a bit later because I want to focus on what we are doing at the moment. That is where the problem exists because you are unable to continue doing what you've been asked to do or what your contract requires you to do because you haven't been paid for what you've done already. Now, I want us to focus on that for a minute. We'll talk about alternatives in a short while. So you mentioned that as a result of this, we're seeing more refuse in the cities. So talk to me, tell me what the process is. If you don't have the money and your job is to go and collect the refuse and take it to the landfill, you don't collect the refuse, what happens to it?
Right now we have challenges as to where to dispose of the refuse that we collect.
Mm-hmm. So you do collect it,
yes.
It's just that you don't know where to take it?
Yes.
So what happens to it? Where is it as we speak?
Currently as we speak, the Insumia landfills and some few dump sites are taking care of it. But even the only existing waste landfill operator in Accra, which is Waste Landfills,
right,
wrote to the Secretariat and threatened that if they are not paid, they might be forced to pull out because they cannot continue depending on loans to run the operations.
So at the moment, it's being disposed of just that you fear you cannot continue.
Yes.
All right. Now, let me talk to you, Mr. Atta Ahin, because you perhaps have more of a bird's eye view of this situation with Koniwas. So what's the problem here? What is government saying about the reason why they can't pay for the service that has been provided?
Thank you. I think, first of all, there's something we call prioritization. I mean, that which we don't prioritize, you don't, seem to be committed to it. And I think that it's a matter of prioritization. It's a matter of commitment. All over the world, I'm sure you are aware that sanitation is a public good. And that is why governments take keen interest in managing the liquid and solid waste, that we generate. If Accra, in fact, Ghana generates over 5 million tons every year, 1 million of which is plastic waste. And of the plastic, we only recycle 2%. It tells you the magnitude of the problem. We are fortunate to have had private sector operators who have gone into treatment and recycling. They've invested heavily into this with the expectation that government will support them. If not at all, to be able to pay them regularly so that they can also provide the services. But having gone around the facilities, our verdict is that there's a lot more to be done. These facilities are processing, they are treating, they are recycling. But there's a limit to which they can go. Of course, you can do all the recycling, the treatment, but you still need the engineered landfill sites to manage the waste that cannot be recycled or treated.
Right.
That doesn't appear to be the case. It looks like with the burning of the Pone landfill site and the OT one, which has been, poorly managed, I think that government should begin to take the steps. We are interested more in the public health dimension of the whole discussion. We are afraid that if something is not done urgently, we may unfortunately witness the 2014 incident where we had several people dying as a result of the cholera outbreak.
Now, you've made the point that you believe it's a failure to prioritize, but Has there been an official explanation from government for this delay? I mean, 6 years to not pay a company that has worked for 6 years. What is the explanation being given for this officially?
For me, I don't think any explanation, will be feasible.
Has any been given at all?
Well, I think expert may have to then tell us whether a tangible explanation has been given. But to the best of my knowledge, no explanation can satisfy what we are seeing and witnessing around.
Let's explore the health implications for a bit. Yes, you pointed to the cholera outbreak, the rather deadly one that happened in 2015, wasn't it, or 2014, where we lost a great number of Ghanaians as a result of it. Now, in addition to us fearing going backwards, we are also failing to go forward. So the president made this promise that we were just reminded of. Cleanest city in Africa by the end of his term. Now I heard you speaking and you said that it is yet to receive the support. Support? I mean, who is to come and support government?
You see, when you make such a bold statement, and we welcomed it, we were extremely happy that the president has made such a pronouncement. Because look, when the president speaks, we know that his appointees will go to work. So we're expecting the ministry, the MMDAs to start doing something which will eventually take us to the vision of the president. Unfortunately, when it comes to financing, we haven't seen any commensurate increase in financing to be able to attain this vision. When it comes to law enforcement, it is very weak. People commit sanitation offenses and they get away with it. There is no sustained public education to carry the citizens along. When it comes to infrastructural development, we have failed. And therefore, we think that if we are able to do all this, even if we are unable to become the cleanest city in Africa, by 2020, very unlikely, but at least we could get somewhere. We could even become the best in West Africa. But I think the government needs to take those steps, which are so important to be able to get us to the status of a clean city.
Now, when you speak to these private entities that are providing this service, I want to get your view of this. It's the closest to an independent view we can get. How close are they, some of them, to collapsing as businesses?
In fact, many of them are just on the verge. Many of them. I have witnessed, we have visited some of their facilities, and you can see that they are really crippled. Previously, many of them used to do quite well. But I think that the non-payment of the bills and lack of support from government has really affected them. I was happy when the president, during the launch of the National Sanitation Campaign, as part of the 11-point directive to the ministries, departments, and agencies, directed that the waste management companies should receive support. So we were thinking that some stimulus package would have been provided them, but it didn't happen.
Right.
But this has really affected them. Because apart from the receipt of payment for work done, elsewhere, government subsidizes even the tipping fee. Or government scraps it, takes care of it, so that when people are going to dump at the treatment and recycling facilities, they don't pay anything.
Right.
So that there's no motivation for them to go and dump elsewhere. But it doesn't happen here.
Right. Did you see that video over the weekend when it rained, the video of Asylum Down and the big gutter?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, the Minister for Works and Housing then watched that video and said it was propaganda.
Are you talking about the Minister for Sanitation and Water Resources?
Thank you. Sanitation and Water Resources. Thanks for the correction. He used to be at the Works and Housing Ministry. Yeah. Mr. Atachi.
That's Works and Housing.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So right.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. He said that it's propaganda. He doesn't believe that is real. For somebody who is waiting for the government to actually kick things up a gear to fix this problem, how does that make you feel?
No, I think that the least we could do is to take steps to address the situation, because it's real. When I also saw the video the first time, my first impression was that, is this real? Then we deployed some members to go and check, and they verified. And so this cannot be fiction. It is real. And this is something that we have been sitting on. I think that we need to do something urgently as a state. The smaller countries are overtaking us and doing the good things, best practices in terms of sanitation management, and we are not doing it.
All right, we're going to wrap up. We've got 30 seconds. I just want to know what you were talking about the future, that landfill is not the most sustainable option. Tell us, what should we as a nation be doing with our waste?
Going forward, if 60% of our waste is organic, we should start thinking of how to turn it into compost. Then we can recycle the plastic bits. And even with the plastic bit, the private sector have worked so hard, where we've put in the plastic excise tax fund, where government in actual fact should release that money so that we can go into recycling on a large scale, so that we can take care of all the plastics in the system and even recycle the plastics. So the private sector have worked so far, and that provision has been made. But as we speak, even that money is sitting with government, and we are complaining every day and now about sanitation challenges in this country, which is not fair.
Right.
So we also have to ensure that the value addition is done, where we have the public-private partnership, clear policy frameworks that would encourage a lot more investors to come on board and then engage in recycling.
I'm afraid that's where we would have to put a pin in it, because I'm told that our time is up. But I'm so grateful to the two of you for coming in, giving us a reality check of the situation. It looks like in the end it all comes down to money. Money that is in the hands of the state that claims they care about sanitation. This is not the end of it. We'll keep talking. But right now, let's talk about something else. The chairman of the Sogakope South District Security Council says police in the area are up to the task of dealing with crime despite inadequate numbers. This follows the murder of Assembly member for the area early this month and subsequent calls by residents for mass police transfers and a restructuring of operations of the service there. Emmanuel Agama says the Assembly is working overtime to ensure the concerns of the residents are addressed. Komla Adum and Fred Kwame Asare have been to the area to assess the situation. Here's their report.
It was one of the major concerns of residents of Sogakope, a community which has been in the news since the murder of Assembly member for the area, Marcus Ajahli. The people were up in arms over what they describe as rising insecurity following a spate of robberies and attacks.
We also want to see that there is a reinforcement of the police, and if possible, the military should be called in, because we realize that security has become so porous that it is giving a field day to the armed robbers to come in, operate, and leave at will.
It culminated in a free-for-all confrontation between the residents and the police at the police station. 3 people sustained gunshot wounds after being hit by stray bullets from the police during the disturbances, which also saw the residents pelt the station with stones.
They got angry, amassed themselves here, and then were pelting stones at officers in the office, and then they were threatening to burn down the place. So in the process, the police tried to disperse them off, and then gave some warning shots where we heard that 3 people got injured in the process.
Here is a result of a mass action by the youth. The stones that the young people and the residents here pelted into this compound smashed into the windshield of one of the police vans there, and that was not the only vehicle that was affected. There's also a stationary vehicle here, a salon car, which has its windshield smashed as well, another one here, and then another police patrol vehicle there. So at least 4 vehicles in all were affected by the mass action of a resident on Monday. Also, some of the glasswares of a police station were also affected by the situation. This resident, who works close to the police station, saw it all unfold.
So the regional minister Bonano Aponuna Yuto, it cover police station like at permitting Toronto. So you reckon matin blowy and mana guys over time you could pop me said go to Juto barrier. So me legi afi ogaba tojo tire legi o time of do pen jinye so bi for famole ko tojo time of ko tire va gbosun leji ko meji jo ko mi po bi amotan ekpe dada so pe dada ma ko o ta pe dada gba o le down police station So police don't have a job, won't have no to down layam.
Okay. So all he's been saying is that the regional minister was supposed to have met the youth of the area here, but then the venue was changed. The youth thought that there was some attempt not to speak to them by the regional minister, and so that sparked, the anger and, burning of tires at the barrier, also some burning of tires here at the police station. Yet after 12, BTA feel energy.
After 12, Makatangi Mania now. So now crying crama ba Pobino, and you have one fear at another Funania to having a shop opposite police station. Yema Tuvo, Yema Joe, some do mosque. Be Navy so bona, so must be Navy so vala, over the over woman over Kana guys or Kaka. We banagala be nice to Navy so no mavala to begin mania for Bangba Macrao.
So he says he was terrified by the situation, so he had to lock up his shop amidst the confrontation. So he left the area. On his way out of here, he got to the mosque and he realized that the soldiers were making their way here. And so it was their intervention that calmed situations and calmed tensions here that day. The residents are calling for, among others, a review of a security arrangement in the area. District Chief Executive Officer for South Town, Emmanuel Agama, admits the numbers may be a challenge.
Requested for about 30 personnel, and then not all were brought, but those that are around per my, thinking they are up to task and they can perform, creditably.
However, he says the available personnel have been up to task.
The past robberies that took place, they made arrests and the cases are in courts. There were no cases that the police couldn't solve in the area. The one that happened at Tademe is in court now. And then some other that took place where the robber raped a nurse and then shot at some people. He was arrested. Generally, the police were up to task.
Meanwhile, 4 persons are being interrogated by the Volta Region Police over the murder of the assembly member, and 2 police officers from the Sugakope station are being probed after a rifle went missing at the station on March 7. Komla Adom and Fred Kwame Asari's report from Sugakope in the Volta region.
Now, climate change and related disasters presents huge risk to sustainable development and the eradication of poverty, especially for the world's poorest, many of whom are dependent on the natural environment for their survival. Now, while there has been relative progress since the Sustainable Development Goals were agreed on, in many countries, economic growth has not been inclusive or equitable, failing to eradicate poverty and undermining the natural environment at the same time. So to achieve this, we must address a number of environmental resilience concerns, which include supporting environmentally resilient poverty reduction, empowering farmers economically in a more resource-efficient manner. Now today on The Pulse, we're going to discuss the work of the Ghana Federation of Forest and Farm Producers in empowering women to escape poverty and help build inclusive communities to respond to climate resilience. Here are our guests in the studio. Hajia Alima Sagitu Said is from PFAG Ghana. That's the Federation of Forest and Farm Producers. Mark Kebo Akparibo, I hope I've said that name right. Yes. Forgive me if I haven't. Mr. Kebo Akparibo is the Executive Secretary of the Telebere VSL Association. Well, hello to you both. Why don't you first tell us about this concern of women not being able to escape poverty?
Thank you very much, Kojo, and pleasure to meet you. So we at the Ghana Federation of Forest and Farm Producers, which is a national federation that was birthed in 2018, towards consolidating the efforts of a number of forest and farm producer organizations in Ghana across 3 ecological zones, that is the savanna, the transition, and the forest ecological zones, have found out that there is an opportunity to be able to create pro-poor wealth creation opportunities, especially for women. But there are teething problems that we all need to address. In the face of climate change, there is a need for a paradigm shift from single commodity value chains to more diverse commodity value chains, which we call the baskets of products.
Right.
Now we are doing this in partnership with the Forest and Farm Facility that is being supported by the FAO in collaboration with its global partners. We are looking to ensure that we are using our strength in numbers to be able to address key issues concerning our membership.
Right. So tell us a bit more about your federation. Which parts of the country do you operate in?
So we have structured the federation across 3 key ecological zones. That is for the northern sector, that is the Savannah Ecological Zone, the Transition Zone, and the Forest Zone.
Right.
So for each of these zones, there are existing FFPOs that have had the opportunity to partner the FFF project, that is the Forest and Farm Facility project, towards delivering services to their members.
Right.
So our constituents are mainly farmers, that is smallholder farmers, but then also member-based organizations.
Okay.
So these are all member-based, self-selected towards a particular cause and across various value chains across the country.
Okay. Haja, tell us about some of the problems that you and other members face.
Yes, thank you very much for having us to discuss this very important national issue, especially climate change, women, and how their livelihoods are affected for that matter. Yes, as women, you know, women are very close to nature. A lot of the things we do is nature related. We go to the farm, we harvest, we fetch water, we carry firewood. So they are all forest and farm related, in addition to the direct farming that we do. Now, in doing all these things, in relation to your question of challenges, we do all these things hoping to do it well and get returns on it. But we are always confronted with a number of challenges. And critical among them is the climate change that is approaching. It's even very close to us. It's just there, we are living with it. And how does climate change affect women and our livelihood in relation to our forest and farm activities? Now you see that there is constant reduction in yield. It's very real. We see that women now need to spend more time to access firewood to be able to live as an energy source. We see that water is becoming constantly a matter of concern because it's getting short every time, and women have to spend more time to go and access water. We also know that when it comes to herbs, because women are always close to people, they heal them, we are caregivers. So as caregivers, nature is very fundamental to us. And for that matter, crops and what is contained on the land is very important to us. And we are consistently losing that as much as well. So in addition to that, it's also the issue of even economic resources to be able to even invest in what we want to do well. Critical among it also is the issue of information. You know, as women, because of a lot of time we spend in providing unpaid job, we have little time sometimes to even be part of community meetings, to take information that will be very meaningful for us to be able to be resilient in whatever we are doing. So moving forward, very, very importantly, this particular FFF project, which is very particular about building models that will help women that the little time they have, business-wise, along the value chain, they're able to develop businesses that will be able to be income generative,
right,
based on what they have now. So it's very important as far as this particular project is concerned. Then it's also important that we overcome the critical challenge of how do we get women to get the right information at the right time so that they can be very, very resilient and overcome the challenge of climate change. Because with farming, if you don't have information at the right time, you may farm, but you will not get the best.
Right.
And that has always been the issue of women. We spend a lot of that time doing things that do not allow us to be able to access. Besides that, when we are talking about rural farmers, who are the real core of the people who feed this our nation, which we don't, I don't think that anybody wants to contest the fact that women along all the agri value chain, we play a very critical role. And for that matter, it is important that we are developed in terms of capacity, in terms of information, in terms of strategic resources, inputs at the right time, at the right place, with the right quantity, to be able to do the right transformation and then move forward. Because women's income has improved, and it's a great it's what give a lot of our rural women money.
Okay.
In addition to other tree crop activities like shea, if you come to the northern sector, if you come to the southern sector, you look at a lot of women are into cashew production. So if you look at all these tree crops, in addition to the crops that we farm traditionally, then that gives us the fact that, and they are all being affected by climate change.
This is what I wanted to ask you, and if you don't mind, I'll stay with you. I'll stay with you for just a moment longer. How are you able to tell that these challenges are being caused by climate change? You know, it's an issue that is debated heavily across the world. There are some who don't even believe it exists. So what are the things that you see on the ground that tell you clearly that it is climate change causing these challenges?
Research, climate change is, there's definition for climate change. There are consequences for climate change. So if you understand the definition and you break it down in the various components of climate change and what it stands for and what the consequences are, if you are living in an environment and you are faced with them, then you can attribute it to it. That is practically how we are doing the attribution now. Now, in addition to that, you also know that for us, if we compare in terms of how the environment has been, the landscape has been, and what we are getting out of it, compared to now, where the forest is almost off, and then you are not getting the yield, and then you need to use more chemicals. The soil fertility is reducing. The ecosystem is just almost off. Then you can just say that we can say we are attributing it to climate change, just based on practical issues that are on the ground. Yeah.
Okay. So who knows about this? I mean, who have you spoken to in authority, and what's being done?
So we are working in partnership with the FAO, with its partners on the forest and farm facility. Right. We're also building the necessary relationships with government institutions such as the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, the Ministry of Environment, Science and Technology and Innovation, and then the Ministry of Lands and Forestry. Now we are trying to launch GAFAP because we've done our initial zonal level activities at the various ecological zones, had some media roundtables where we highlighted the issues of women in agriculture. And tomorrow at the Swiss Spirit Alisa Hotel, we will be doing the national launch of GAFAP to now birth the whole GAFAP idea that has been in the works. And I must say that this, Kojo, GAFAP is not coming to replace the various FFPOs in terms of their identity. GAFAP is coming to coordinate the collective efforts towards building synergies for greater national efforts in the direction of promotion of climate resilient landscapes and proper world creation.
Okay, what are the signals from government so far? Do they seem interested in actually taking action to solve these problems?
Yes, so far there has been partnership. Already PFAG, where Madam comes from, has had some very useful engagements with the government, especially in the area of rice, where the rice campaign came up in the Upper East region. And there were some positive developments in that direction where the government is, through the Ministry of Agriculture, now providing treasures across those belts that were having those challenges. And so we believe that there is more room for constant interaction between the various government agencies. We know that there's a Ministry of Business Development, and we would want to engage more in that direction because we would want to ensure that we're incubating businesses that are forest and farm related.
In addition to that, let me just add, in addition to that, the government is so much particular about it, in the sense that this launch we are doing, we are getting the Ministry of Agri participating, the SDG Secretariat is coming, the Business Development, I said, is so all the related ministries that work in relation to agriculture and forest and farm, they've all indicated their interest to participate and be part of the launch. And moving forward, we are going to agree on a common agenda as to how to pick the issues that will come out. That has been coming out or will come out from the discussions forward. So they've been very interested.
That's wonderful. Well, let's certainly hope that is a good signal that's going forward. You know, all stakeholders are going to work together to deal with climate change and eliminate it as an impediment to the development of women in particular in your sector. I want to thank you both for your time with us this afternoon. I truly appreciate it. Right. Well, she calls herself the Lioness of Africa. She's toured the world performing at some of the most prized venues and on some of the most prestigious stages in Europe. The Upper West regional-born Afro-pop singer Wiyala has now braved the odds to relocate from Accra, the national capital, to live in the village where she grew up, Funzi, in the Wa West district. Now, this 34-year-old already has a street named after her in her area, and she's building a cultural theatre there. She's also training the village's next generation to sing and dance. Joy News' Justice Bedu traveled 850 kilometers to Funzi to meet Wiyala.
Wiyala is a young, energetic, ambitious, determined, forward-moving, positive young woman.
A rendition of her 2014 classic Tinambayi. This is Wiyala, born as Noella Wiyala. Her name is a Sisala word that translates to the doer. After traveling the world, sharing stages with Grammy Award winners, she's back to her native Funse, giving a meaning to her name, putting her hometown on the world map.
I have promised and I pray that God, if you ever make me a superstar, I promise I'll also give back to whoever I can give back to. And my mother has always been telling me that when God bless you, you get this, you go here, blah, blah, blah. Please don't forget home, come back home. So I'm back home to share my talent, share the gift God has given me. I believe my talent is a gift. And if I don't share it in a positive way, I think God will take it from me.
It's only been a month since Wiyala moved back home and already has young people here coming to her to learn how to dance and to sing.
I like Wiyala when she's always on the stage performing and when she's always around the world calling Fonsi Fonsi. I am so very happy.
I joined this group to learn how to dance and how to sing.
Growing up in Fonsi, there was no electricity until 2012. Then, I'll say I spent my teenage years here. Fonsi is a small town which consists about maybe 1,500 people. Heaven knows where we are going, but we know we will get there.
This woman wants to win a Grammy one day, and that may take her far and near. But Funse, the town after her heart, she says, would always be home. Justice Bedu, Joy News, in Wiyala's Funse.
Heaven knows how we will get there. We know we are there. Thank you. Today my voice is back.
Ever energetic and infectious Wiyala there. Now, the Ghana Health Service is holding an emergency meeting here in Accra to review the country's preparedness and response systems to stem the threat of deadly COVID-19. Now, the meeting with the regional directors of health is expected to touch on the country's border preparedness following confirmed cases in neighboring countries, Togo and Burkina Faso. The latest to have confirmed 2 cases. Travel is restricted across Italy and public gatherings have also been suspended until further notice. Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte ordered people to stay at home. Here's a report from Global News on how the world is responding to the outbreak.
Giusta oggi è di restare a casa
Italy's prime minister on Monday announced that travel restrictions would be imposed across the entire country just a day after locking down much of northern Italy, security measures that were already considered drastic.
Non ci sarà più una zona rossa.
There will not be any more Zone 1 or Zone 2 in the country. It will be Italy. Italy is a protected zone.
Un'Italia zona protetta.
The announcement made Italy the first country to restrict movement nationwide, a dramatic new clampdown aimed at halting the rapidly spreading coronavirus in Europe's worst affected country. The unprecedented restrictions, which ban all public gatherings and require people not to travel except for work or emergencies, come after an alarming jump in deaths tied to the highly infectious disease in Italy, with the death toll there reaching 463, more than a quarter of which were reported in the past 24 hours. Italy has more than 9,000 confirmed cases of the coronavirus, putting the national health system under massive strain.
We're encouraged that Italy is taking aggressive measures.
In Geneva, the World Health Organization's director said on Monday that the coronavirus is now closer to causing a pandemic.
Now that the virus has a foothold in so many countries, the threat of a pandemic has become very real. But it would be the first pandemic in history that could be controlled.
In Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Monday also announced more aggressive measures to stop the spread of the coronavirus, requiring all citizens who return from abroad to self-quarantine.
After a day of complex discussions, we made a decision. Anyone who arrives in Israel from abroad will enter a 14-day isolation.
Israel had already taken some of the most extreme precautions to prevent a local coronavirus outbreak, forcing visitors from many countries in Asia and Europe into isolation.
Most recently, Burkina Faso has recorded 2 cases of the coronavirus, COVID-19. So let's speak now to my colleague who is in Burkina Faso. He's a journalist. His name is Mr. Parfait. He joins us now. Hello and good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So what can you tell us about the circumstances that led to identifying these 2 cases of COVID-19?
Yeah, it's confirmed. In Burkina Faso, there are 2 cases for coronavirus, or Corona-19.
Okay. How did...
the 2 cases...
Yeah. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, but there are 2 cases and 1 suspect.
Okay.
And the 2 cases who back from France at Malona City was contract this virus. He's one of the great bishops who call it Mamadou Karambire and his wife, who was in France.
They were in France?
Okay. Yeah, in France. The land is Malona. The city is Malona.
So how did your country identify these cases? Did they go to hospital?
Yeah. They go from the big hospital in Ouagadougou who call Blaise Compaoré Hospital. Other Tengango Hospital. But it's the big one in Burkina Faso who get experiences, medicine, who can treat it. But right now, and the news or this afternoon time, we'll talk about a miracle. But the two guys, Bishop Mamadou Karambire, are beginning to recovery.
Okay. So no, go ahead, please.
And the government, okay, and the government are take many plans to fight against this pandemic health.
Okay. So for now, they are getting better. Is that what you're saying? The 2 cases, they are recovering?
Well, we can talk. We are getting better, but they're still at the hospital.
Okay. Tell me about the plans that your country has made to to protect citizens from the coronavirus.
The first plan is the communication, sensibilization, and create the green number for free call. The second one is mobilize the resources to fight against this pandemic at the borders in Burkina. Borders, airport, and car station. They mobilize many agents to speed intervention. While you talk about there are this case in this place, there are green. If you call the green number, the medical agents will be there quickly to take care of this case. And the three one, the government create an area to contain the patients for treatment, who call quarantine.
Okay, so
we create.
No, please go ahead.
Okay, and we create many agents to make the sensibilization for the meeting place, for the windows, for the village, and naturally the village would never the borders like Cote d'Ivoire border, Togo border, Ghana border. There are many medical agents who will be naturally there to take care of all the voyages.
Okay, so all the travelers will be screened at the borders to make sure that they don't have any symptoms.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Are there quarantine hospitals? Do you have hospitals for quarantine in case you have an outbreak?
Yeah, they create a place at Tengango Hospital, who is the big one in Burkina Faso, to put all the patients in quarantine.
Now, about 2/3 of your country is controlled by rebels. How has that affected your country's ability to plan for coronavirus outbreak?
For coronavirus, right now, there are many meetings for the members of government, for the minister, for the health minister, to find how we can do to quarantine this health.
Okay. Nasara Parfait, I want to thank you very much for your time. We appreciate you speaking to us. Nasara Parfait is my colleague in Burkina Faso. He's a journalist, and they've obviously been dealing with the most recent identification of 2 cases of the COVID-19 virus. Now let's have a quick look at what's happening around the world. Let's make a quick update of the virus across the nation. Now, the big numbers, first of all, 116,335 cases currently recorded. 4,090 of them have died. 3,024 of those deaths happened in Hubei, where the virus originated. And we have 64,391. The vast majority of those affected have actually recovered. And of course, the remaining number would be those who are still being treated for the disease. Now, let's have a quick look around the world. Maybe we'll start with the United States, where there are 761 cases currently identified, and they are quite widely spread across the map of the United States, from the East Coast to the West Coast. We have the bigger numbers in the more populated cities of New York and California. Of course, in Boston, Massachusetts, we also have quite a bit of a situation there. But New York State, California State are the 2 big ones. Also in Seattle, we have quite some large numbers. Not forgetting the more tropical Miami and the reasonably hot at this time of the year, Texas. So the country is, of course, scrambling to put in place as many of the measures that were advertised to deal with it. They've got $3.6 billion being used on that. But at the moment, we have 761 confirmed cases in the United States. Let's go to the origin. Let's see what's happening in China, where mainland China, where 80,757 of the cases were identified. Of course, you can see right there in the center, the biggest, the epicenter of it, the Hubei province, where it all kicked off. But scattered across this so hugely populous country, there are so many pressure points, hot points. Guangzhou has recorded quite a large number. Hong Kong has got its own share as well. And if you look across in Shanghai, which is on the eastern coast, Beijing, which is up north, you can see that it has really, really decimated the country. But of course, this is 1/3 of the world, so you can understand why these numbers would be large. Italy is the second largest, has the second largest concentration of COVID-19 cases, 9,172 cases. Out of that number, 463 of them have died so far. 724 have recovered. The rest of them are currently being treated and monitored with the disease. Iran also has had some serious fallout, 8,042 of them, but it is quite centrally located. Most of their cases quite central to the most populated parts of the country near the capital. And actually, no, quite far from the capital, about near the center of the country in the Esfahan province. The capital, Baghdad, has also recorded a few, quite a few cases. So that's the reality of the cases across the world. Now, back here in Ghana, some pupils are also being taken through lessons on COVID-19. Here's a viral video of a teacher and her pupils. It's catchy, isn't it? Yeah, and that's how a teacher decided to deal with the education on the coronavirus. People certainly engaging. Let's hope that they remember what they're taught. Now, the Kolebu Teaching Hospital is seeking the general public's help to identify an accident victim who was brought to the hospital 3 weeks ago. The victim, who is said to have been knocked down by a commercial vehicle and abandoned in Teshi, was brought to the hospital by a good Samaritan. A chief senior officer at the surgical department of Kolebu Teaching Hospital, Emilia Okai, says the patient has been treated and is ready to be discharged, but his family is yet to be located since he's unable to give details of himself.
By someone and left at our ER, so he was attended to. Okay. When he was brought in, he was unconscious. So he was named unknown. But after he was seen to and improved, so we could not get the relations. You know, the ER is a very busy place. So there was a need to move him to the department that took care of him. And so he is a neuro case, but was discharged there. Since we couldn't get the relation, we had to look for a place for him. So we admitted him to the department and we are taking care of him.
How long has he been here?
We took him up from the 20th of last month, that's 20th of February. So since 20th of February, he was moved from the ER to the surgical department. Initially, when he came, he was not speaking, but as time goes on, you know, with head injury, at times they seem to improve a little. He tried to murmur something, we couldn't get it. He has mentioned his name once, and at times when you talk to him, he responds once. Further questions, he doesn't say anything.
So what is going to be the next thing?
A moment when we took over and we found out he was unknown, the hospital authority was informed, social workers came in, and so we are liaising with the social workers, and they are going to look for a place for him, and they will take him up from there till we get the relations.
Well, if you recognize the individual in that video, please do your best to contact the hospital, and let's see if we can't reunite him with his family. Well, that's it for The Pulse. I'm so glad you were able to join me. We're back tomorrow with even more on the show. But until then, you can satisfy your thirst for knowledge at myjoyonline.com. We've got all the latest updates on all the stories from around the world right there.